Welcome, everyone. My name is Hope LeGros, and I'm the Director of Georgetown Languages at Georgetown University Press and an editor for language learning materials and linguistics. Today, we have the pleasure of bringing to you a conversation about our newest Russian textbook, Etazhi, second year Russian language and culture, by Evgeny Dengub and Susanna Nazarova, who are joining us today. In this webinar, they will present the pedagogy they use to develop the textbook, demonstrate how it can be used to effectively teach second year students and to prepare them for their third year of Russian, and show the features specific to Etazhi. We will leave time for your questions at the end of the webinar. And a bit of housekeeping, the chat has been disabled, so please ask your questions in the Q&A section of the bottom, at the bottom of your screen, so that we can address them at the end of the presentation. So let me introduce Evgeny and Susanna before they jump in. A native speaker of Russian, Evgeny Dengub has a PhD in second language acquisition in Russian from Bryn Mawr College. He is a professor at the University of Southern California, Dornsife. He has taught at Middlebury College's Russian School, directed a Star Talk Institute for Teachers of Russian, supervised TAs at Amherst College and the University of Massachusetts, and has created and led workshops and trainings for teachers in Russia and the US. Evgeny is the co-author of Russian for Advanced Students and of Panorama, Intermediate Russian Language and Culture, which received Atziel's Prize for Best Contribution to Language Pedagogy in 2019. He also is the co-editor of The Art of Teaching Russian, a comprehensive guide to teaching and learning Russian, including current research and thinking in applied linguistics. With Susanna Nazarova, he is the co-founder of the award-winning online resource center teachrussian.org, which now includes over 100 published activities, lesson plans, tests, and other materials for Russian teachers across the globe. Susanna Nazarova has an MA in linguistics and translation from Moscow State University and an MA in applied linguistics from the University of California at Davis. She currently teaches Russian at Mount Holyoke College and at the Middlebury Russian Summer School. Susanna has conducted workshops and seminars on language pedagogy in the US and abroad. She also is a co-author of Panorama, and her literary translations have appeared in a publication that I will not be able to pronounce very well, but I'm going to give it a go. Chitenya, Readings from Russia. She is also the author and editor of Chites, I'm not going to say that right either, and the Russian language learning supplement of Russian Life. So Evgeny and Susanna, please take it away.
Thank you, Hope. And I just want to say that we couldn't wish for a better editor and a better publishing house. So GUP has become our, wonderful home, and we're so happy that Etazhi came out from GUP, and the book is finally here. So I just want to say a few words about kind of a conceptual making of Etazhi and what we try to achieve. So we wanted to create a book that has meaning at its core, meaning at its kind of a first priority. So, and by meaning, I mean, students would interpret meaning from things they would listen and read, and students would produce meaning. And so we wanted to include as many activities and questions and assignments where there is no one correct answer. So where there is no right or wrong. More of a как вы думаете, что вы считаете, how would you live in that host family? Would you be friends with that person? So, and that we try to achieve that as much as possible. We know how, tired students got at this point after first year of drilling cases, drilling verbs and conjugations. So we decided that if we create a book where there's emphasis on just that, our students, will not appreciate it. So we wanted to create a book that allow our students to express meaning at their level, at their cognitive level, because we're dealing with adults. This book is for adults. So, and as we created questions and assignments, we try to keep in mind that. So there are no easy questions just because it has dative case or instrumental case, but these are questions that really provoke discussion at a kind of a at the level where our students are. Also, we wanted to create an authentic textbook, and I'm so grateful to many of you in this list who've contributed your stories, your voice, your experiences. We have, I don't know how many contributors, almost 100 of people who've submitted their stories about, life in Russia. And we kind of sort of stepped away from our great everything's, Akhmatovas and Bloks and Pushkins, we love them all, and we do have literary texts at the end of the chapter, but the core of the book, the most of the book is not about, Red Square or Hermitage. It's about regular people, students, faculty, friends and family living in Russia. And so that's how we presented culture through those stories, through the eyes of so in a way, our book should have been called Galasa, but that title has been taken, as you know. Hi, Richard Robin. And authentic meaning, authentic texts, we define as the one that, again, puts meaning first. So some texts have been edited, some texts have been translated from English, but what we try to preserve is the meaning. We try to include as many authentic photographs, and again, I know many of you submitted them, and kind of stepped away from stock photos and as much as possible, and include real photos, real images of people across Russia. And that's another thing we try to achieve: diversity and balance, gender balance, ethnic balance. We tried carefully to remove as many, Natashas and Olgas, and kind of include as many names, that come from, Muslim tradition or Uzbek, so that people can see, if only on the surface. I know we could have gone deeper and bring even more voices, but at least students see the names and they see it as part of the contemporary Russia. So I'm gonna stop here and let Susanna continue.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. Zhenya, can you see there are like people working outside? Can you hear all these noises? Or should I move away from here? Okay, I'm going to share my screen to show you, to those who do not have the book yet, how the chapters are organized and then how activities flow. So what I'm showing now, everybody can see my screen. What I'm showing now is part 3 of our first chapter, which is family. So part 3 is отношения, as you can see. And what you see the goals and then lexica, the vocabulary. Vocabulary comes first at the beginning of each part, but don't be fooled that this is where sort of our work on the chapter started. Actually, the vocabulary and the grammar came from these stories that Evgeny was talking about. So the idea was, okay, we collected all this authentic material from all these people that contributed, and then we divided them into topics that we wanted to include in the book. And then we saw what kind of vocabulary and what kind of grammar people used when, talking about these particular topics. And that's where the vocabulary came from. And actually, that's where grammar came from, that we practice in each part of the chapter and each chapter. So yeah, you can see the dictionary, the little dictionary in front of each part that we're going to really practice while working on this part of the chapter. And we decided to organize it as vocabulary you already know. And that's sort of the idea, is that, okay, we're building on what you know. You've gone through year one in Russian study, and you certainly had this topic of family. And yes, here's what you might remember, you might not, but it sort of orients students. Okay, I'm familiar with this. And then new words that they're going to see. And you can see we have a lot of information on these words, especially on verbs. We have the government, we have the aspect, we have the 3 conjugation forms, and for some more difficult verbs, we have examples right here. Now, at the end of the book, we have all these vocab organized neatly in a dictionary. So students don't have to leaf through the book to find a particular word.
And there's also a chart with conjugated form of all verbs that we use in so something like 500 Russian verbs, but actually in the book with present tense, imperative, and past tense if needed.
Okay. I clicked on chat. I want to get out of this. Zhenya, can you see my chat window, or only I can see?
We can still see your PDF.
My PDF. Okay. Okay. And then I want you to sort of see how it unfolds. So students have this vocab, and probably this vocabulary will be given students as homework, the new vocab. So they familiarize themselves with the vocabulary. There would be maybe some homework exercises, and also the Quizlet that I believe you will have the link to. So students have all this to practice, and then they come to class. And we have this first exercise, романтические вопросы, where they practice this vocabulary with their partner. And again, as Evgeny was talking about the meaning, here they are not doing mechanical exercise, but they're actually learning about each other. And some questions are, maybe will make people a little bit uncomfortable. For example, there is something like, do you fall in love often? So we decided not to avoid these questions, but actually give students a model to say, okay, I'm not comfortable answering this question right now, because certainly when they go to Russia, people will ask them uncomfortable questions. And this is something, again, maybe I'll mention also that about the goals of the book. When we got together and decided, okay, we have to do it, we have to write a second year textbook, like, what is the goal? And the big goal was to prepare students to go abroad. So all these stories that we collected are stories about interesting situations or problems that people had to overcome while studying in the Russian-speaking countries. So that's how it came together. And that's why we want to teach them to encounter difficult questions too. We spent a lot of time on verbs. We decided that we really want to focus on this. And in every part of each chapter, we have verbs, and we practice forms here, and we practice translation, and then we practice some creation of sentences with these verbs. So this you might call some mechanical exercises here that don't necessarily second on meaning in the way Evgeny described, but that very useful. exercise 36, Артур и Ольга, первое свидание, the first date of these people. I want to show you how one topic, one exercise, one activity can unfold and go through different stages. Here you see Olga and Artur writing about their first date. From the, Olga writes what she felt and Artur writes what he felt. We have different stages here: the first impression, contact, awkward moment, and what happened later. So there is a little bit psychology in there, how different people perceive the same situation. And hopefully it's also sort of how a Russian young woman can perceive a certain situation and a Russian young man. And then we turn the attention to our students and ask simple questions that they can answer. How did you like Artur and how did you like Olga? So they can really talk about this, not focusing on the new vocabulary necessarily, but get them talking. And then they have a writing exercise. We ask them to pretend that they're sitting in the same cafe and witness that meeting and describe what they saw. And here already they can use the vocabulary that they learned. The next exercise continues this Olga and Artur activity, and there is SMS key between Olga and her girlfriend and Artur and his male friend. So we're bringing more people into this situation. And then it goes to listening activity, as you can see. And we check for comprehension here. Transcripts of the audio are included at the end of the book. And then students practice giving advice to Olga and Artur in this situation. And here we give some models of how they can phrase this advice. Okay, and from there, finally, we get to grammar and practice чтобы construction with the verb хотеть that students would use, I think, talking about the relationship, because a lot of times when we talk about relationship, I want him, I want her to do this, or to be this, or to be more this, or giving advice, I want you to do something else, don't call him right away. So that's how the grammar comes about. And we have a really short description, short explanation here, because this is enough for them to practice this construction. And then we have some grammar exercises here. And again, the grammar exercise is not just a mechanical exercise, but okay, talk with the partner now, having those чтобы constructions already in front of you. Да? Ольга хотела, чтобы Артур смеялся над ее шутками. What do you think? Is that true or not? First, we don't ask the students to form the construction, but here are the examples, again, in a meaningful exercise. And then they move to creating sentences with чтобы, then again, focusing about meaning in в, обсудите с партнером these questions. Ты бы хотела, чтобы мужчины всегда платили за женщин в кафе, right? Interesting questions, we thought, and then translation and so forth. I want to add, maybe Zhenya, you want to jump in. I want to add something about grammar. So as I said, grammar explanations as vocabulary came from those texts or those stories, but we realize that, of course, there is grammar that we always use, right? We always use cases, and we always use verbs, and we always use some kind of aspect, and we always use verbs of motions. So this kind of huge topics, сквозные, да, грамматические темы, we put in the grammar appendix that's included in the book. And as we go through, for example, we focus on, I don't remember, a case in chapter 1. I don't remember. I think it's accusative case in chapter 1. So we ask the students before doing this exercise, go to the grammar appendix and review the case. There are forms of these cases. There are functions, there are examples. So everything the students need to review the case. Zhenya, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to say that we don't abandon certain topics, especially important one, cases of verbs of motion or aspect. We work throughout the book on cases. So they work on, it's not like, okay, this chapter is an accusative case. No, so the work on cases go throughout the book until, the chapter 6, and the work on verbs of motion continues, the work on aspect, the work on conjugation. So that's kind of that approach that, with exception of like maybe participles that we touch briefly upon and some other topics, but we come back to Stobe, for example, and talk about Stobe with infinitive. So that's the approach we took. So we're not just like, okay, done and forgot. We will go back to that topic later.
I can finish showing maybe this, how we continue talking about relationships. Before that, I want to say also, as Evgeny said, we don't drop the grammar and go to the next grammar. The same happens with vocabulary. So the vocabulary, we really traced every word, every construction. So it's very carefully maintained, from chapter to chapter. And that's why the textbook, we recommend that you go from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to the next chapters. It's not the modular, the modular construction where you can take any chapter you want at any time of the semester. So they're supposed to be taken consecutively. And yeah, so the vocabulary really expands from the first part of the first chapter to the second, and we build on and we build on and we build on. And it comes when you come to chapter 6 is our last chapter. We really constantly review and reuse this vocab. So I think this is a real strength of our textbook. And so just to finish with the relationships, we switch from Artur and Olga to Svetlana and Jason. Again, it's a real story. And here is Svetlana talk about her relationship with Jason, who was her former husband. And that's a real story. And here's the real picture of this couple. So students read the story, students discuss the relationship, and it always, this is always very popular. Students want to talk about relationships. And then you can see that from this text, we got this verbs of motions with po and u. Because this couple constantly moved, and they would go to one place, and then Jason would find another job, and they would leave this other place. And so these verbs really, were important in telling the story. So we do this grammar, and then again, send the students to the grammar appendix to look at the whole picture of the verbs of motion if they want to. And so we have some exercises to practice these verbs of motion. And then you can see that we have this story of Svetlana and Jason version 2, where they actually have to practice this vocab. They already, the students are already empowered. They know the story, they talk about this couple, and that's very easy to them, and which is great. We love to show the students, you can learn these difficult verbs, because first when they look at the chapter, oh, these are long verbs, we didn't have these long verbs in year 1, расставаться, влюбляться, and so forth. But they already, by this time of the chapter, they know it, and it's very empowering. And then here's Jason, and you can see that things didn't go too well from his appearance. So they actually separated. And at some point we give his version of the story. You know, oh no, we ask the students to write Jason's, right? We ask the students to write Jason's versions of the story, and that also goes pretty well. Right. You can see here in exercise 46 that we focus on выражение времени, the time expressions. That's very important to organize your story. And so we do it at the end of each chapter when there is a big writing assignment. You know, how do you organize chronological events into a story? How you organize an argument? How you organize, you know, a comparison? So we focus on these phrases and expressions. And here is рассказ Джейсона, exercise 47. So as you are getting into the sort of exercise 4750, that, you know, it's the end of the chapter. And finally, they meet with a, I want to say psychologist, but it's not a
therapist.
Okay, they meet with the therapist and discuss their problem, and therapist listen. And okay. Zhenya, I know you want to jump in here.
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, just because it's real stories and often real names, not in this case, but oftentimes we include real names, students care about it. So there's a reason for them to really pay attention and to discuss. So, you know, unlike this abstract Mishas and Mashas that we often see in the books, this is, I think students feel and see that this is real stuff. So, and it's always more interesting and kind of more fun to discuss real stories. And again, I will, and this type of activities and texts lend well to role play. So there's a lot of opportunities for role play, even though sometimes we include a task, okay, role play therapist and Jason, but sometimes it could kind of come natural just because of that situation, because of that story. You know, there is a role play that could be easily done, or even, you know, spectacle based on that story. So that's a great kind of addition, could be a great addition to your community classroom. I do want to add that we have a task based on a painting. So each chapter has a painting. We didn't include painting because it was a headache, as you know, to get the rights. So, you know, and students can find the painting, you know, in 2 seconds on their phones. But there's a painting in each chapter, and there's also a short story. I think we have a couple of Chekhov's, Zoshenka and Tefi. All right, should we stop here, pause here, and answer questions?
Sure, let's do that. Before we jump into the questions, I did want to talk a little bit about the audio, which I came up in some of the Q&A, but and we put a link into the chat. But do you want to take a moment to talk about the audio? What you have audio for, and remind them where it lives. It's on guptextbooks.com, and it's also on press.georgetown.com, and you can talk more about what the content is.
Right. So each chapter has a few audios. I can't say there's a lot, but, you know, a number of audio files. And there are two types: the audio that there's no text in the book, so students need to listen, although again there's a transcript for each audio in the chapter at the end of the chapter. And there's also there are also recordings of texts that, you know, students can read, and including short stories. So there are quite a number of files, of audio files, that students can listen. Yeah, for listening and reading plus listening.
Great. Well, there's two questions here, and one is about assessments, essentially. The specific question is, how many vocab quizzes and tests do you recommend to have per semester? One longer quiz or test per unit, or several shorter quizzes, tests per unit? And maybe you can take a minute too to talk more widely about assessment and how you integrate it with your teaching of the textbook.
Suze, do you wanna take this one?
Yes. So
Looks like,
yeah, quizzes for me is, when I look at the word quiz, I think about the vocabulary. So I would have one vocabulary quiz for each part of the chapter, for each sort of the list. Now, you need to maybe know that there are, I think in the first 3 chapters, there are 3 parts. And then the last 3 chapters, there are 2 parts per chapter. And that sort of organically happened. But then we decided maybe it happened for a reason, because students could actually, swallow more vocabulary and grammar per sort of unit. And we didn't want to break up the topics into 3, but rather into 2. So yes, I would have a vocab quiz for each part of the chapter. And vocab quiz, my quizzes are always in context. So I would actually take the grammar constructions that we practice in the chapter and do sort of a fill in the blanks in the sentences using the grammar and vocab, so that they know the form, not only the vocabulary, but also the forms, for example, dative case or an aspect. And then I would have 1 test per the whole chapter. And I think we do have a sample test, right, in the teacher's resource somewhere on the site.
correct, we do. On press.georgetown.edu on the Etazhi book page, there's a link to a sample test and I think a sample quiz.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And my tests, my vocab quizzes are easy. I just use Quizlet test function. I'm sure you know about it. You can create test vocab quiz in 2 clicks and print it out. So, because we have Quizlets for each set, vocabulary set, it's really easy to create and recreate vocab quizzes for each chapter. Yes, my vocab quizzes happen about every other week, every 2 weeks, and then there's a bigger unit test.
A couple people have asked if there is a digital resource, an electronic component for the homework assignments. Do you want to talk about what's available, Evgeny?
Yes, so we and you should understand that we conceived this book 5 years ago. So before we knew that this big, thing is going to happen. So our intention was to get away from electronic workbook and just have one book that will not require additional, payments, additional resources, just one book that students and our colleagues could use, and all the exercises that students do are in the book. So we believe there's enough, maybe some drills. Sometimes I even can come up with like a quick grammatical drill, but there's enough stuff in the book, and a lot of exercises, not all, but a good chunk is, write a letter, respond to this prompt. What do you think about this? So they're more they're less mechanical in nature, but for those that are mechanical, students can just, use it on a piece of paper and submit it to the instructor. Or my students, I completely turn to Google Drive. So all my assignments, students submit all the assignments electronically through Google Drive, through Google Docs, and that worked just fine. They, they type the answers, and that looks great. So we might have at some point, I don't know, come up with additional sort of a supplement or a hybrid version of this book, but at this point, it's just the book.
Thanks, Evgeny. Right. We are always thinking ahead and trying to improve. So definitely let us know your feedback as you start teaching with the book too. And we'd love to hear how it's gone for you. All right, another question for you. Is there some sort of introductory unit or activity to facilitate student transition from first to second year? When students come after summer, their Russian is pretty rusty. If you have any recommendations on how to ease this transition with your textbook, that would be great.
Thank you, Paulina, for this question. Short answer is no, we don't have any introductory unit. We put them right in. And I should say that we've used this book in variety of different institutions, private, public, small, large. Most of them had Troika, I believe, or Galasa in the first year. So students do experience some, I don't know if it's shock, but kind of okay, it's cases again, it's conjugation again. But our intention is to, because time is short and we need to dive right in and kind of immerse them back into Russian. And I believe the topic we chose for first unit, Семья, well, come on, no, babushka, dedushka. So there's, it's kind of a comfortable enough, although situations different, but it's a familiar enough topic, and for students to kind of slowly ease. I mean, you can spend a little more time on I think I usually spend a little bit more time on unit 1 and just take things a little slower than I would do later. But in my experience, again, I've taught with Etazhi for 5 years. Students would recover from that initial shock very quickly. So they would be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in my experience, when students, because when I think about puti that people used for a long time as a second year book, it's tough, it's difficult. And I guess when students come from a first year textbook to Etazhi, when they see this kind of a long, complicated words, that somehow was like, oh, wow, this is too difficult. But actually, once that we've gone from chapter 1 to chapter 2, they're used to it. And chapter 1, I think, is a little actually more difficult than chapter 2 in terms of vocab. So it's a very interesting sort of start, where from the start, they get a little scared, overcome it, but then the learning curve is really much less steep. And so after second chapter, they're already, okay, I can do it. So again, I think it's really, makes them believe in themselves more. And maybe have a talk with them on how to use the book and how to study vocabulary in the beginning, instead of having some kind of a introductory in between material.
I recall too that when you guys were pilot testing an earlier version of the textbook, you learned a lot from what students were willing to do and what they weren't, and you adapted the book to suit that you changed the pacing and kind of changed the structure a little bit to account for that. So you really did take the time to figure that out before we got to the point of publication.
Yes.
Right. This book's been very well piloted, and I'm grateful again to so many of you here who've agreed to do it and give us feedback. It's really important.
All right, let's do a couple more questions before we wrap up. One question which kind of follows on the last is, not just what should come before Etazhi or how to prepare for it, but what do you propose would be a good textbook for after, for third grade?
I don't think we can we can only answer one with
It's
one word
behind
answer.
you, Hope, somewhere. It's behind Hope somewhere on the shelf.
Panorama.
Yeah, Yulia, we can talk privately about it if you feel like. But yeah, I mean, certainly, again, major first year textbook, Между нами, Beginner's Russian, Troika, Голоса, Live from Russia will prepare our students well for Etazhi. If they had 2 regular semesters, normal textbook, if they covered most of the textbook, we never cover all Troika, so, but that would be enough. And then if we completed Etazhi, that would be enough preparation for advanced books such as Panorama.
There's one more. Let's answer this last one, which gets into the nitty-gritty a little bit. Do you want to talk about the last one, the number of contact hours that you recommend as a minimum for starting Etazhi?
Right. Can I just quickly answer Yulia's question
Sure.
about the electronic component? So Yulia,
Yes.
and again, I can send it to you privately. I mean, I've been designing some activities on WordWall and Go Formative. So I've used some outside sites to for like drill types of activities, and I'm kind of in the process of putting all together. And if you like, we can talk about it separately. So there's some things on outside platforms that I've been using. And as far as the contact hours, again, Daria, we've used it in different contexts. We used it in the intensive program. We used it in the regular program where we only have three 50-minute blocks of periods a week, or 375 minutes period a week. Right now I'm teaching a course that meets 4 days a week for 50 minutes, and we are well on the way to finish half of the book in the fall semester. So I would say, or it could be twice a week for an hour and a half, but, I've used it successfully in as little as 3 periods of 50 minutes. You wouldn't probably finish chapter 6, and that could be the start and the link between the second year and the third year. But yeah, you would cover most of the book in that context.
And to answer, I think there were questions before, could you cover the whole book? So I think comfortably 5 chapters and a little bit of the 6th. And I think the 6th chapter is wonderful to start your third year with, because it goes into sort of more abstract topics and grammars, participles and verbal adverbs. So it's a wonderful start of the third year, chapter 6.
And there's one final question. Is this a semester long or a year-long textbook?
It's a year long.
Yeah,
definitely. And it's more than enough material for the year. Yeah.
There's some variety there. You can make some choices. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you to Evgeny and Susanna for answering all our questions and giving us a good overview. I want to mention a couple of things. There'll be a roundtable at Axial coming up in this February when the sessions are released. Look for it in the program and you can join us if you're there. If you would like more information about the textbook or to request an examination copy of the book, you can go to our website at press.georgetown.edu. Print and digital exam copies are available. I know that some folks requested them and they were not going out the door, but they are now. So please feel free to make your request. It will make it out to you. That's all.
And there's a digital version of the book, ebook, that is available for purchase and rent, right? So
that is true. That is true.
Students are trying to save money. They can go onto vitalsource.com and get the rent this book a version of the book.
Correct. Right. That is right. Thanks for mentioning that, Evgeny. There are shorter or longer options depending on what they would like to do.
Right.
Great. Well, have a wonderful Friday, everyone, and a relaxing weekend. And again, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.